All right, here we go.
What's good, everybody? I'm Robert Dickens Jr.
This is Ryan Reed.
This is Elanders Frazier.
This is John Gaal, and you're listening to Volta.
Changing the conversation
For percussion educators,
Designers,
And performers.
All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode for Volta Percussion. I am joined by my cohorts, colleagues, best friends, men of the hour, Mr. Robert Dickens Jr., Mr. Ryan Reed, and Mr. John Gaal. Wherever that orientation ends up as you're watching. So today we are here to discuss preparation. Do we prepare our students enough for anything and everything? And how do we coach the person? How do we how do we coach the person versus coaching the performer? Who's got some thoughts? Any thoughts on that? Wait, hold on. Are we doing a teaching tip? I know it's a lot of fumbles today. How do we prepare our students enough for everything?
I thought we were doing a teaching tip first.
Are we starting off with the teaching tip? I guess it doesn't have to relate to this. No. Who's got the teaching tip? Rob? Okay, let's hear it, Rob.
My teaching tip is teaching without words. I think that students pay attention to what they see us do more than what we actually say. And I think that we're always teaching students how to be be within the ensemble and how to be as a person, etc. I think they're picking up a lot of that from us. So I think it's very important that we are aware of that and we're deliberately teaching without words how we want students to be.
Bravo. I like that teaching tip. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to think about that anytime I get in front of students. It's like, what am I doing? As opposed to what am I saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like that age-old classic phrase, action speaks louder than words. Whether it's good action or bad action, someone's always watching. So
fair.
It's like,
fair point.
It's like my parents have always said, they are surprised at what we, as their kids, have picked up through the years, because you don't know. I mean, I'm not a parent. You could probably relate to this a little bit more than I can. But just like what your children pick up, just the randomness of things. And so, like, even when I'm having a conversation with my folks, just, either the weekly or bi-weekly catch-up, seeing how they're doing. And then we're talking about something. I'm like, you remember this one time? And then you said this. That has stuck with me forever. Now I tell other people this phrase. And they're like, oh, that's so weird. That's like the stupidest thing ever. But I'm surprised you remember that.
I will. My daughter hasn't started really giving us back like, intelligent phrases. But the facial expressions, like, she's like a mirror of what my wife does sometimes. Just like the faces that, like when something just ain't right, just it's like, okay, like close your eyes when I'm talking to you. You can't just be walking around making that face. You just don't, because you gonna mess around. Your teacher gonna be talking to you. You gonna make that face, and then we gonna have a problem. I ain't coming up to the school to save you either. Like, we've at least made it a point not to curse around her, and not to watch anything that has cursing. But lately, she's been on this kick of mute the TV. I'm coming out. Like before she even like leave the room, like we watching like Big Bang Theory. Ain't no cussing. Ain't no cussing in this. But she's a smart little girl. But yes, I can see that with kids, but I guess I never really thought about it with my students either. You know what I mean? Like, because they're all like teenagers and older. Like, I feel like their habits are already built in, but once again, in the learning scenario, they're watching more than they are doing a lot of the times. So that makes perfect sense. Good job, Rob. Good job, Rob. It rhymes.
That like 10 minutes before the start.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's still relevant, brother. Don't do yourself like that. It's still relevant. So, okay, so the topic today, do we prepare our students enough for anything? Anything and everything, and then how do we coach the person versus coaching the performer? Do we actively think about coaching the person over the performer?
I think so. And I think it's, for me, it's changed a lot since the start of the pandemic, in terms of that right now with kids being students, just being more, I don't want to say fragile, but being more fragile. I mean, I think that's the best word, just in terms of them feeling isolated or not part of something, or being very sensitive to things going on, you know? So I think there is an aspect of coaching the person to coach the performer, because our life experiences only enhance our performance levels, especially if we're doing productions, or, you know, take this to the concert percussion side of things, if we're doing pieces that have program notes about real life things. Like if you are playing a piece about, you know, a couple whatever, if you understand what that feeling is, you can emote that better. Or if you understand what anger is, you can emote a production or a piece that is supposed to be angry in quality way better than if you don't have those life experiences. So I do think, from a performance standpoint, coaching the human in terms of the emotional quality of music is very important. Now, does that come before the technical aspect of the playing? I don't think so, because obviously if you can't play it, nobody's going to connect to the emotive qualities if it sounds like a bag of dog dump. But I do think that once the students can handle the technical aspect of it, and the musicality aspect of it, in terms of playing the dynamics, playing the shaping, playing the phrasing, like, yeah, bring some real life into it as you are, bring yourself to the performance.
Is there a percentage level? Like, is there like, you should only do 87% performance and then, you know, 13% person? Like, should one be more to the other, or should they be equally matched? Or does it depend on the day, mood, moment, etc.?
I think there are a lot of variables you have to consider. I think one primary variable you have to consider is just your, I guess, how long you've been the teacher, the educator with that specific group, right? When Ryan was talking about coaching the performer, coaching the person, in my mind, I was visualizing a graph. How if you haven't been with that group for a long time, if this you're just starting out, you may focus more on educating the performer with the technical aspect. But over a period of time, eventually that, line of technicality and that line of personality, whatever you want to call it, will cross until eventually you're going to be coaching more the person, and the technical will start shooting off as like a parabolic function, so that you're focusing more on the person, and the performer will grow from your relationship, your experiences, your conversations. So I think you do have to consider the length of time you've been educating your students when you're asking that question, E.
As you were talking about that, it kind of made me think about the concept of like how we approach the beginning of a season versus the latter part of the season. So you're talking about the amount of time that you've known the kids. So I'm thinking from a freshman all the way to a senior, but even still from like, you know, pre rehearsals. If we're talking about like fall marching band, I'm talking about like pre rehearsals in like April and May all the way to late October, November, right? Like, I definitely feel like there's way more performer based conversations happening in the beginning of the season and way more personable. This is how we do it. Not to quote Montel Jordan, towards the end of the season, you know what I mean? But, you know, when I'm thinking about that, it's like I was trying to like think back to what conversations did I have with my juniors and my seniors at the beginning of a season? Or did I not have much to say to them and I just focused on the younger students? And I feel like I still had a lot to say to them because I always put them in a position of you don't know everything. You're just crossing new levels of things that you do know. You know what I mean? Because I vividly remember having a conversation with two juniors that were in a snare line about like midway through a season one time, and I just asked them to play me something just off the rip, like play this for me at this tempo. They couldn't do it. And I said, the fact that you think that you know everything and you can't achieve this shows me exactly how much you've been putting into what you're doing. And then for you to have the audacity to come out here to rehearsal and not be able to take the feedback that we need to get better really shows something about where y'all think your progress actually is versus where it actually is. You know what I mean? And they went home that day. Yeah. They went home that day and you started seeing the increase go like this because it was just like, I thought I was here and I'm really here. And I feel like this. You know what I mean? I feel like way on down here. You know what I mean? I felt like in that moment I was coaching the person more so than the performer because I felt like I was speaking to their personality and what they were doing, you know, their approach to the mindset of everything that we're getting involved into as opposed to fix this, fix that, fix that. It wasn't a technical thing. It was, how are you mentally approaching where we're at in the season right now? And for you to be upperclassmen, your mindset needs to be here. You know what I mean? Not, we got it, we're just coasting. No one's ever coasting. And y'all should be in charge of the mindset that says we don't have time to coast. We've got to keep getting better every rehearsal. And that was kind of what I was trying to demonstrate to them is like, I don't care where you're at in your career, aging out, you still don't have time to coast, right? You can coast on that bus ride home after the last show. You know what I mean? Like, if we're still in active rehearsals, you're still working to try to get better every step of the way, or else the train is passed and you're dwindling downhill. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Thinking about what you just said, I guess about coaching the performer versus the person, I feel like the younger they are, the less they understand that you're coaching them as a person. You know what I mean? You're kind of using the vehicle of music, performance, whatever, to develop them as a person. And some of that development kind of happens. I feel like both of those things are on the same track. Like the more they develop as a person, the more they can take from the technical aspects of it too. Hopefully, or I guess that's just me being optimistic, I would say. But to me, the more that they're able to grow as a person, the more they're able to handle new concepts and new information and things like that. And I mean, I definitely feel like that was the track that I was on, just auditioning for things and trying to get better as a player. The more opportunities that I had, the more different situations I was put in, the more I grew as a player and the more I could go back and look at the performance aspect because it was causing me to grow as a person. You know what I mean? But I definitely agree with what you're saying as far as, you know, the different conversations that you're going to have with students at you know, that are in that upperclassman range, because they understand. It's like most times we always say when we get to the end of the season or so, like any errors that we have are mental errors, because it's not an information error where you don't know what to do, but it may be a coaching the person to have the character and the desire and the tenacity and all those things that makes you play at a high level consistently,
right.
not just every now and then.
Yeah, the integrity of the performer and doing the right things regardless of whether or not somebody's paying attention to what you're doing. And as young people, we slip. We slip often just because we may be enjoying ourselves, we may be having fun, there may be something else that's on our mind, you know what I mean? Like I can think back to those moments to where even being like in drum corps and stuff like that, like I know there were moments in the season where like I was just slipping, and my instructors, they pulled me out and told me you need to wake up, and I didn't even know I was asleep. You know what I mean? Because it's like you get to a point to where you're going through the motion so many times at such a rate to where you don't even realize that you have fallen asleep at the wheel. You know what I mean? And that's a self-awareness thing that I think we can all learn from, is that, the reason why you need a mentor or an instructor or friends in your life is to, when those moments happen, when you're on autopilot by just circumstance and you don't realize you have fallen asleep at the wheel, and there may be no cars on the road, so you're okay, but you could be heading right towards another one and you're not even aware. You know what I mean? And that outside influence is necessary.
Yeah, I think. No, go ahead, John. No, I was going to say. Part of that early season, I think Elanders, you brought it up, and Robert, you did too, is when we talk about training the person versus training the performer, it's not just training them as, human life experience. Like you guys kind of brought it up. It's training them mentally, especially your older students early on. I always encourage my students to use that time, if they're older, to like, one, you had bad habits last year. At some point, you got to start to look past your bad habits in order to make the ensemble just play together and be good. And you can make some habits just work to get you through the end of the season. And the beginning of the season is a great time to really dive into yourself and think about those things and fix those things, and still taking the information that we're given to the younger kids. But our seniors don't need this is your wrist, this is how you turn your wrist comment like the freshmen do. But the juniors and seniors need to think through those mechanics and going, am I turning it the way he's talking about? Am I turning it as smoothly? Is my sound as open as, Elanders is when he plays, or Roberts or Johns or whoever? Is my sound as good as my instructor's sound when they play for me? Tying in the teaching tip of the day of playing for your students. Not only is it good for them to see it, it's good for them to hear us play. So are they trying to match what we're doing? And I think, especially when we get to the part of the season that we're in now, this like middle of the season, I had a comment for my students at a show yesterday, or at rehearsal yesterday before the show. We like broke down a bunch of stuff, and we went to do a standstill run in percussion ensemble, and everything we broke down in small chunks didn't show up at all in the run. And I said to them after the run, and we had time to do 2 runs before we had to push out to the field, I said, you can't use rehearsal to think that things are fixed. You've got to use rehearsal to give yourself the checklist of, this was bad, so when I get to the run, I have to think this exact thing that Ryan said in order to be successful. And lo and behold, when we did the second run after I told them, like, we didn't fix anything, we gave yourself a checklist of things to think about, none of those issues happened in the second run. So I think part of training them as people is training them to understand what the role of rehearsal is. It's like, yes, we are quote unquote fixing things, but it's not like fixing a pipe where you tighten the bolt down and it's fixed till the problem occurs years later. Like, this is fixed for right now until you stop thinking about it. And then your habits are going to kick in and you're going to go backwards again. So I think early season, when you were talking about over the timeline of one season versus multiple years, we've got to do more mental training of our students and call that the training of the person. Just, this is how you have to think in order to be successful. And then hopefully they realize that's how you think to be successful at anything in life. Like how I learned to think because of band is why I'm successful in 90% of the things I do, band related or not band related.
I like that.
Jumping on board with what Ryan said. So as a teacher here in Texas, which I'm sure is everywhere across the United States, I have to go through 30 hours of professional development throughout the year. And so this past Wednesday, I went to a leadership professional development seminar. And just, because I always like seeing, okay, what makes this group special? Why are they really, really good? What can I take from that session, apply to myself, and share with my students? And we've talked about this before, developing your why, right? Your quote unquote why we're doing this. But I think today's topic on developing the performer or developing the person, I think that why question is very, very important. And in my leadership training this past Wednesday, the presenter brought up Simon Sinek, which for those that don't know, he is a motivational speaker. He dives deep into all these different types of topics, such as the why, or management, or business, or whatnot. You can Google him and check out his stuff. But one thing that was presented in this presentation was his golden circle, and this is something he's developed many, many years ago. Yeah, but I pulled it up on Google real quick. I kind of want to share with everyone who's listening. But basically, you have 3 circles that goes from a small to a medium to a large. And the smallest circle, really what makes the people throughout history the most successful, is it goes from their why to their how to their what. So I'll start on the outside of the circle. And again, this is not my stuff. This is Simon Sinek. So he's done lots of research on what makes leaders throughout history successful and inspirational, and why you want to follow them. But from the outside of the circle is their what. And so their what is, every organization on the planet knows what they do. These are the products they sell or the services. So in band, we are teaching music, right? The what we're doing is we're trying to put on a show, we're trying to put on a concert or something. That's our what, right? And then you scoot in a little bit further, and then you have the how. Some organizations know how they do it. These are the things that make them special or set them apart from their competition. So how is this band rehearsing? How many texts do they have? How do they specialize on their rehearsals? Like, how do they break it up? Things like that. That's just an example. But then what makes those top tier groups amazing and awe-inspiring and whatnot is the inner circle, which is the why. Very few organizations know why they do what they do. Why is not about making money. That's a result. Why is a purpose, cause, or belief. It's the very reason your organization exists. And I think that's very important when it comes to developing the person or the player. At the end of the day, the why should be about the people in the band organization, developing them as great human beings, at least my philosophy, that once they do band, if they continue to do some type of music career or something else entirely, they can take those lessons you've taught them about becoming a better person and the mental aspect of remembering, previous lessons and applying it to future situations or whatnot, right? Just developing them as better people. So that why aspect I think goes hand in hand with the conversation we're having today.
Agreed. I think that's really good, just because we have to always analyze that as instructors as well. I think that some instructors may not. I think we all have a desire to have a great group and to have them sound really good and have a great product. And I think that sometimes the frustration, I know at least for me, that comes into place is when I forget when having a great group and having them sound really good becomes my why. You know what I mean? And I think it's a simple and easy mistake to make just out of habit of like, we want it to sound this way and kids sounding this way, and having this achievement makes them quote unquote better because now they have succeeded on whatever scale it is that we're measuring by. But I think that what I have to come back to, and I think that is very sobering for any instructor or teacher or educator, is to always remember that if you focus on and you pour into the student, then you're going to get the other why that we do things of ones and, class champion and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff follows it, but you can't pick one over the other. You know what I mean? You gotta pick the coaching the person before you can think about, getting them to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I think that that's something to think about. Like, why are we teaching students? Obviously, we ain't doing it for money. Let's be honest, because we could, get a lotto ticket and probably have a better chance, or be in any other field and be wildly successful, making more money. So obviously, it's not about money. Hopefully, it's not about just achievements and we got this many world championships and blah 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 and this and that and whatever, because I mean, we just went through a pandemic where there were none of those things for anyone to achieve. So we didn't have that opportunity either, and all of us are still teaching. People all over the country and all over the world are still teaching. So it must be a deeper why as to why we're doing it. And I feel like that's the best thing that's come out of the pandemic, is almost kind of like a values reset, if you will, for what it is that we're doing. And it helps us to get back to the core that is going to make us that much more successful as a group, because we have that foundation of why, like you were talking about.
I like the way that you presented gets us back to a value reset, because I feel like with something like this, especially in the education activity, there were a lot of people that decided education ain't it for me if I can't do it in this, frame of reference, et cetera, et cetera. So when you talk about value reset, like they're actively saying that the reason that I was doing this does not meet the reality that I currently have to experience, which is okay. And rightfully so. Those people needed to exit. You know what I mean? Like, because they probably weren't doing it, to your point, for that reason that we talk about, which is the development of students in this frame of reference. You know what I mean? And focusing really on developing people, which education is, that is it. Like, you have to develop people. I mean, the whole point of going to school is to be a more developed member of society once you get out. And regardless of what age you're starting at and what curriculum that you're doing. We talk about, adults that go back and go to school, like they're going to learn more, about certain topics, but really they're learning a lot about themselves. You know what I mean? And us having that awareness as teachers, as educators, is so important. You know what I mean? Not only is it important, but we also have to share that with our students in the right moment. Because I think there can be a sense of oversharing to say, I'm here for this, I'm here for. And after a while, it's like, yeah, but the other day it didn't feel like you was here for that. You know what I mean? Everybody's gonna have ups and downs in their career and what they're doing and how they're doing things. But I think it is important for your students to know where you come from and why you decided to do this whole thing. You know what I mean? And it could be at the very beginning of the season. It could be, middle. It could be the end. I mean, you got to pick your moment because you got to know your students. You know what I mean? You got to know where their head's at and what they're feeling. But I think it's important for your students to understand why it is that you're here, why you're doing what you're doing. Like, and I can count the number of teachers that ever expressed that to me, and those were my favorite teachers. And my favorite professors were the ones that told me a little bit about why it is they still do what they do, what they enjoy about doing what they do, because I knew they were all in. Like, I knew they were all in, and that the information that they were putting out was a severe choice that they made about their life to do this thing. You know what I mean? Even if it was one of my professors is the most mundane, it was like financial management. And she was very candid about she could be doing anything else, but it's something about this college situation where she needs to be in it to be able to share these things and do these things. And I sat in the front of the class because I just enjoyed hearing her teach and share what she did, how she did things, et cetera, and how she lost money in XM Sirius because she didn't go all in because she thought it was going to be a joke. I remember that too. So from a preparation standpoint, if we are preparing both the person and the performer, what more can we do to prepare our students? What more can we do as educators to prepare our students? Let's flip it. What can students do to set their teachers up for that preparation?
Go practice.
You're not wrong.
Stop wasting my time and actually apply what I'm telling you to get better and go do it. So then we can move on to something else that's going to take you to that next step in life. Once again, if it's going to be a performer aspect, the technical side, I guess you could say, the experience side, or the person aspect, right? The behavior, the mindset, the character development aspect, right? Go take what I'm saying, apply it, and try your best to go practice and get better. And are you always going to get better? No. Like E said, you're going to have your ups and downs. But if I'm seeing that you're putting in the effort and you have that hunger to be a better version of you, a better performer, whatever, then I will pour more of myself into you. Or I'm going to pour myself into you whether you like it or not. But it's going to be less frustrating for me if you soak in what I'm trying to share.
It's probably going to be less frustrating for them too, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I also think that you get a different version of the person as well when you're making that decision, that you're deliberate about taking in that person's information and using their information. You're going to get a different experience. And it's good that I think I heard someone say the word mentor earlier, that I think is so important, especially for those juniors and seniors. One, knowing where they want to go so that we can create a framework for, okay, now all the comments that I'm going to give you, you can fill in the storyline yourself that, oh, I want to be in law, or I want to be in this or whatever, or I want to perform in this group. You can now take all the information that I'm telling you to give yourself the breadcrumbs to get there. But I think the other part that sometimes is frustrating for students, if we don't help them change their mindset, particularly 11th and 12th graders, is that they can feel like, oh, well, I'm getting here and it's like I'm just not getting better, or I'm just kind of plateauing and I don't have information to do this or to do that. And they don't understand that when you get into the real world, the people that you want to get information from you, they will not come and give it to you. Like, we're here giving you the information every day, telling you, you need to work on this to get better. You need to work on this. You need to work on that. This isn't good. Like, we're checking them at every point, but they don't understand that when you get into the ensembles that you want to be in order for you to get to the jobs that you want to be in, the career field that you want to be in, you are going to have to seek out that knowledge yourself. And you're first going to have to be accountable for all the information that's already available. Then you're going to have to seek out the next level of knowledge yourself. So I think that sometimes students, we may not necessarily prepare students for the shift in their thinking, that, okay, my 9th and 10th grade year, I'm kind of sitting back listening to what the information is. My 10th and my 11th and 12th grade year, I'm trying to use that information as best I can, but it should be more self-driven by the time you leave here. Because if you are not self-driven to find the information or seek out whoever you need to get the information, then that means I haven't fully prepared you. Like we're talking about as far as the topic of today, like you are not prepared if you are not willing to seek out the information and then actually hold yourself accountable for that information. So I think that's a big part of it. Those people that you want to get, you want to get the information from them. Even I feel like this could apply to designers and educators as well. You're going to have to go seek them out. They're not going to call you and be like, oh, let me tell you how I started this great blah, 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 blah. And I was so, they're not going to do that because they're too busy doing what it is that they're already successful at. They're too busy pushing their train along. And I think sometimes students don't understand that because everything is handed to them.
One thing to tag off that is that students, if they don't understand something, they have to go along with the seeking. They have to ask questions and talk about it. Like I have taught too many students that sit there and take in the information and just stay confused because they're not willing to feel like they look stupid or look confused because they're not willing to be like, I need that a different way. Chances are, if you need it a different way, there's probably 2 or 3 other people that need it a different way as well. But you've got to get the information in whatever the way you need it. And not everybody can explain it not everyone can explain it every single way they need it explained, that their students need it explained the first way through. But that doesn't mean you just sit there and be confused the whole time. And I think as an instructor, that's the most frustrating part for me, is that I feel like I'm explaining this information multiple times, multiple different ways, and it's just not clicking with a student, and I don't know why it's not clicking. And after a certain point, after I've explained it so many times, the assumption is that they're just not listening. And 95% of the time when the student has finally come and talked to me, it's not that they're not listening. They just either didn't have the right question to ask, which is fine, but any question is better than no question when you're confused.
Right.
Or they were scared to ask. And it's like, well, why are you scared to ask? All these other kids have asked questions, and I've never, nobody's ever bit them. Nobody's like taken their drumsticks away from them. Nobody's laughed at them. So that's the students have to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. Ask the question or just try. Even if you're like, I don't have all the information you need. Sometimes, believe it or not, students, the instructor is not going to give you 100% of the information because you're not ready for it. Like, we will give you enough for you to experiment and start to discover on your own. But I lose a little bit too much patience too quickly with students that are like, but what about this? But what about this? But what about? Just try it first. Just try. Nope, I'm not going to answer that. Just try it.
Just
no words.
trust me.
Just try it.
Yeah. It takes a lot of trust on the student's part to be able to get into that back and forth play with an instructor or with a teacher. And I find that even in my day job with adult learners, adults have difficulty with that trust so much, and they are adamant about just show me the technical side of this theoretical thing that you're trying to. There is no technical. It's all theory right now. But because there's not that inherent level of trust me, use the information I've given you to work this out. It's like we crave that technical checklist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, just start experimenting, and then those are going to present the questions that we need to talk about. but we can't get to that point until the experimentation process starts. And that's a big thing in education that I think if more people understood that about education, that sometimes the experimentation is a good thing, not always a negative thing, then I think students would start themselves on a better path from Jump Street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I definitely feel like there's a lot of there are some educators that I know that it almost seems as if they know everything and there's nothing that they don't know. And in order to be a good teacher, you have to know everything. You have to have all the answers all the time and always be like, I know exactly what should happen and the order that it should happen in. And this is the question that you should have at this point. And that's not true. Or at least the people that I've seen like that, their groups don't play very well. But I don't find that to be true. I think one of the most transparent things that we can do as educators is, like you said, you have a mindset that is okay with experimenting, is okay with, having kids ask questions of, well, why do we do it this way? Why would we do it this way? Okay, you want to know why I'm saying not to squeeze the stick? Cool. I want you to try to play what I just played, and I want you to squeeze the crap out of the stick. Okay, good. Doesn't work, does it? Okay, so don't do that. It's okay for that to be a model, but I think it's like you said, if there's no basis for them to understand experimenting and getting better and being okay with being in that experimental phase, then they're definitely going to be uncomfortable trying to cross those thresholds.
I think, Robert, you hit the nail on the head with us encouraging them to experiment, because when we talk, we have to be a little bit more specific when we talk about education, in the fact that this is music education or performing arts education when we're talking about this, because math education is not that, at least at the level that high school students are learning. 2 + 2 is 4. 3 × 2 is 6. Like, math facts are math facts. George Washington was the first president. That doesn't, you don't need to experiment for that. That's a fact.
Right.
Like the periodic table is the periodic table. So it's students are not encouraged to experiment in 90% of their lives. Like, flipping burgers is put the spatula under there, flip it over. You don't need to experiment in a better way to do it. You got to get it from one side to the other side. But here, it's like, these are skills that are not commonly learned at a young age or commonly learned outside of this idiom, whether it be, a visual art such as dance or like painting or music or choir or band or percussion. And I think that's what makes it hard sometimes for students to seek out the experiment or feel comfortable experimenting, because in math, as long as you know your math facts, you don't feel like a failure. 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
But when you put it in the music terms, like, there's shades of right and wrong. 50 Shades of Grey, There's shades of all these different things going on. Of like interpretations,
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is that we got to encourage. And sometimes it's as easy. I do this all the time with my middle school students. Hey, take 30 seconds and practice this on your own. I just want to watch how you're practicing. So that way they're not experimenting. They are experimenting, but they're, in their mind, they're practicing, and I'm just watching them practice. And then I'm learning about how they practice and learning how they learn and how they do things, and then tailor their part of the lesson for that. But I think that's an easy way to experiment with it versus just going, well, go home and experiment with it. Let them experiment in rehearsal, and you control the environment in which that's happening.
I think that's a key thing to that is the controlled environment, right? Like without the controlled environment, we can have chaos. From the time that you started explaining it, Ryan, the analogy of cooking came to mind, and all I thought about was MasterChef, was the fact that MasterChef Jr, to be specific, is the fact that all these young kids have come from all these different schools of thoughts and how to make, scrambled eggs can be different for any cook in the world. But the one thing about those cooking shows, the same thing like my music education, is that they're in a controlled environment to experiment with how they do something. Yeah, there's a recipe, and we give them the recipe, right? Like we're giving students, this is how you turn your wrist. This is a recipe for success. However, because you have different body dynamics, finger shape, hand shape, etc., that process, similar, is going to be minutely different for you than it is for the next person, for the next person, for the next person. That's why the experimentation part is so key, because that minutia is what's going to allow you to achieve it at a high level, and understanding that minutia is what's going to allow you to achieve it at a high level. But if you don't experiment, if you're only told just do it this way and don't say a word, then you don't know what it physically takes for you to be able to achieve what we're trying to get you to achieve. You know what I mean? So you've got to have the controlled experimentation, so we can say, oh, well, you can tweak it this way a little bit, to the left, to the right, up, down, to be able to get to the sound that you want, to the pitch that you want, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Talking about winds players. But if you don't have that controlled environment, like our self-taught students, the students that go home and try to learn it all on their own, then you could have chaos, because they don't know if they're dialing too far to the right or dialing too far to the left, and bad habits can creep in. You know what I mean? So you're absolutely on point, Ryan, and the controlled environment is so precious, because what you do in that controlled environment also is going to leak into their mindset of what they do when they get home and practice, which goes back to Rob's teaching tip. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's going to, what you say, how you do it, how you physically do it, right? It's going to leak back over to their personal practice process. Well, I saw Ryan doing this way, so I should probably do it this way at home too. I've never seen Ryan do that before. Maybe I should stop. You know what I mean? Like, that's also gonna come into their mind. Like, I've never seen Rob pick up the sticks like that. I should stop it. You know what I mean? So so it's like, I feel like we've gone full circle with this topic, and like, I'm seeing the controlled environment in a very different way about how we coach students, what we talk to them about, and how we talk to them about it, and why we talk to them. That's John's golden circle there. What, how, why? Bam. Is there anything else we can expand on or add to this topic to make it? I don't know. Is there what else?
The ending was too good, bro.
The
ending was too good. I dare not mess with that.
Well, as always, to our listeners out there, thank you for listening. For any new listeners or listeners that you would like to recommend this to, you can find us on all of the different podcast channels: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. We're also broadcasting on YouTube, and you can find us on Instagram. So thank you all for joining us for another thrilling conversation of Volta Percussion. Myself, Mr. Oh, that's kind of third person. I don't want to go there. My name's Elanders Frazier. I'm joined by Mr. John Gaal, Mr. Ryan Reed, and Mr. Robert Dickens Jr. Y'all have a great time, evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you're listening. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
See ya.
Peace.